The first day of summer is Thursday, but Mother Nature's getting an early start this year. The U.S. could see almost 200 new or tied heat records this week, spanning more than a dozen states. A powerful heat dome is stretching across the country. Parts of the Southwest are at risk of wildfires, and several are burning in California. Extreme temperatures also hard on our health. With the heat, we want to make sure that our bodies are prepared to withstand it, especially for people who may be struggling with certain illnesses or taking certain medications. So to share how you can avoid getting heat illness, I'm talking to sports cardiologist, UTHealth Houston, Dr. John Higgins. Thank you so much for coming in.
You're welcome, Haley.
So tell us who is most at risk for heat stroke, like specifically people with certain chronic conditions might be more at risk than others,
absolutely.
Right?
Well, from the get-go, Haley, the young, so kids, for example, that are under 10 or the elderly over 65, and then the medical conditions. So think people with heart problems, with respiratory problems, neurological, psychiatric problems, as well as people that are currently ill, like with diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, and then and a fever. And then finally, people that are working in hot conditions. So it might be that they're outdoors, you know, landscapers or construction workers, or indoors, like working in a hot laundry or a kitchen, a bakery. And then finally, Haley, thinking about also the temperature outside, not only the temperature, but the humidity. When the humidity goes up, it's really, really hard to sweat. And sweating is the main way we kind of get rid of water. And then finally, as you mentioned, some of the medications that we know are associated with heat illness. Those are common cardiovascular drugs like beta blockers, diuretics, as well as anticholinergic drugs, which is a common feature of a lot of the mental illness drugs. And then something that a lot of people are taking, antihistamines. Antihistamines actually reduce your ability to sweat. So if you are working out in the morning, I recommend don't take your antihistamine before you work out. Take it after you work out.
Because it works as like it dries up your sinuses, so it's drying up everything?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. See, that's why I wanted to mention this, because I know that all of the drugs that increase your risk for heat illness are all super common drugs. Like a lot of you out there might think that maybe the heat doesn't apply to you, or maybe you're only going to be outside for a little while. But if you're on these drugs, it increases your chance of having a heat exhaustion, right?
Absolutely, Haley. And you know, most of these drugs, their kind of peak effect is in the first 2 to 6 hours after you take them. And that's why I say, you know, if you are on any of these, think about, you know, maybe doing your workout either before or much later after you take them, so their effect is not as much around. And of course, you know, hydrating, Haley. I mean, that's a big one here. People have got to hydrate.
Of course.
Starting when you wake up in the morning, because, you know, the air conditioning systems in your home, actually, they have dehumidifiers in them. So when you wake up in the morning in Houston, you are actually slightly dehydrated.
Already waking up dehydrated, So what do you recommend that people do, specifically if they have a heart condition, a neurological condition, if they're on these medications, and so they know that they're more at risk? What are your recommendations for them besides hydrating?
Okay, so in addition to hydrating, if you're gonna work out early in the day, late in the day, or actually indoors. You know, take an indoor class or even just power walk at the mall, you know, where it's air conditioned. Making sure that you acclimatize, especially if you're moving, for example, someone who's been in Houston their whole life, that's fine. But someone who's just moved to Houston over the summer for a new job, give yourself about 2 to 4 weeks to acclimatize and, you know, tone it down. If you're not sure about your current medications and your situation with respect to heat, definitely talk to your healthcare provider and ask them for advice about, you know, when is the best time to work out, and, you know, what are some of the things that your medications are going to do that might actually increase your chance of heat illness.
I keep trying to remind people of that this summer too. Like, I realize this is something we talk about every summer, but every summer your body has to get readjusted to this. And you might have felt heat exhaustion before with a headache. It might pop up as a new symptom this year, right?
Exactly. And that's an important thing that you mentioned, Haley. You know, if you are starting to get a headache, that's generally quite a bad sign. You know, with heat exhaustion, which is a kind of the earlier stage, you know, think kind of feeling a bit dizzy, you're sweating a lot, you've got a bit of nausea and, you know, cramping and that sort of thing, but you're still kind of overall, you're able to function. But once you start getting a bad headache, you know, you stop sweating, this is when your temperature really goes up, into that heat stroke mode. And this is actually a medical emergency. You can collapse, you can get organ failure. So if someone is starting to get dizzy, what I would say to them is, first of all, get out of the sun, try to get into air conditioning, get some cool fluids on you, or even, get into a cool bath or a bathtub or something like that. But certainly if you see someone go down, that is a medical emergency. That's generally heat stroke, and you want to call EMS.
You can't bring them inside at that point and try to cool them off. You need to call 911. It's an emergency.
Exactly.
As a cardiologist, do you see this every summer?
Absolutely, Haley. One of the big things we see is this condition called rhabdomyolysis, where the heat actually starts cooking your muscles, and it breaks down the muscles, and they can actually directly damage, those byproducts can directly damage the heart. They can cause heart attacks and strokes, as well as kill the kidneys, and so people can go into renal failure. So this is something that we see. And, I tell people who are working out, Haley, really, really important, avoid the middle of
the part of the day.
10 to 2. Hydrate. Every 15 minutes you should be stopping if you are out in this kind of heat. And at the earliest sign that something's not right, you might be feeling a bit dizzy, you're getting a bit more out of breath, you sort of just don't feel yourself, let someone know. And that goes for kids who are at these camps. My daughter just got back from a camp last week, and they were very good about that. They made sure that they weren't outside in the middle of the day. But if you are at camp, or tell your kid if they're going off to camp, if they have any sort of symptoms or anything that's bothering them, or they notice they're not sweating, or they can't pee, let the camp counselor know.
Speak up for themselves.
Absolutely.
Because you mentioned children under 10, which normally when we talk about the vulnerable groups, it's children under 5, but even up to 10 could be at risk of heat-related
Exactly.
illnesses.
That's right, Haley. And prevention is always the way to go. So light clothing, white clothing, that wicker type clothing that can sweat and cool you down. Hydrate, and or sports drinks. And if in doubt, let a grown up know, especially if you're at camp.
Yeah, this is the time when doctors actually recommend the sports drinks. Dr. Higgins, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time this morning. All excellent tips.
Thank you, Haley, and stay cool.
Nice.